Good evening. Good evening. Those of us in the audience here, we have people joining us live on Facebook. We're here at Griffin Hospital Center for Healthy Living, located in Oxford, Connecticut. Tonight we are doing a live cooking demonstration. The theme this evening is cooking on a budget, batch cooking. For those of us that have families to feed and we're worried about returning to school and how are we going to prepare meals every day and prepare for the week, and we think cost effectiveness and how expensive it is to try to eat healthy. So this evening we're doing this live demo with the hopes of learning a little bit from our clinical dietitian, Angela Vita. Let's have a round of applause for Angela. We have from Massaro Farms in Woodbridge, Connecticut, Katie Poole. And behind me here to my left is a very talented Daryl Murphy, our executive chef from Griffin Hospital. So we will be taking questions live during the presentation. The goal would be to direct a question to the person most able to answer. And without further ado, we're going to get started. Angela is going to lead off our presentation today, which will follow with Katie Poole, and then on to the live cooking demo with Chef Daryl. Thank you. So Katie.
Plate. A lot of patients and people ask me, tell me what you eat. What do I eat? It's very simple. It's your opportunity to be creative and meet all your nutritional needs by using this plate as a reference. You always want to try to make your plate half with vegetables, non-starchy vegetables in particular. You always want to have a variety of colors because each vegetable has a different nutrient that helps different parts of the body. Of course, we have carrots, which have beta carotene, which is good for your eye health. Then we also have tomatoes, which when you cook them turn into lycopene, which can help with other things such as prevent prostate cancer and stuff like that. So I always encourage my patients to try to eat the rainbow when it comes to eating fruits and vegetables. Then we always want to emphasize whole grains. What are whole grains? Brown rice, whole wheat pasta, whole wheat bread. And then always leave room for a healthy protein. It can be chicken, lean meat, fish, and beans. So keeping this plate in mind, you can be really creative when it comes to creating meals for you and your family. All right, so I'm going to teach you guys how to navigate the grocery store. Not only will this be budget friendly for you, but it'll also make sure that you're eating a lot of variety of foods. So can you guys tell me what's the first department you see when you walk into a grocery store? Produce, exactly. So being that you're walking into a grocery store and seeing the produce right away, it's a great opportunity to fill your cart with healthy produce. As we go along the line, you can then fill up with seafood, your meat, and then your eggs and your dairy. So that way you're getting whole foods and minimally processed foods. Then once you're done shopping around the perimeter of the grocery store, you can hit up the middle aisles and purchase your whole grains, nuts, seeds, and beans. So instead of going aisle by aisle, try to shop the perimeter first. All right, so we are so fortunate to live in the Northeast region. According to the Department of Agriculture, we actually have over 5,000 operating farms in Connecticut. We have to take advantage of the amazing local produce that we have in this area. These are some produce items that are in season for August and September. So we actually have some of those items here today that Chef Daryl will show you. But this is from the healthyfamilyproject.org. I encourage you guys to go on this website to see what foods are in season. Why is it important to buy foods that are in season? So it's actually more affordable. Think of this, when you're in the grocery store in January, if you buy strawberries, they'll be $4.99 a pound, and they might not taste as good because they're coming all the way from California. By the time they get picked and transported to us, might not taste as good, and they tend to pick them before their peak ripeness. It's really important to buy them when they're in season. Like right now, they could be like 2 for $5 at the grocery store and taste sweeter than ever, okay? Not only are they tastier, they're also more nutritious because they're being picked at their peak ripeness and growing in the right temperatures and not being transported from far away. Meal planning is key. Plan to fail or fail to plan. Refer to the Harvard Healthy Eating Plate like I mentioned. Say you pick a protein item like shrimp, pair it with a vegetable and pair it with a starch. Get creative with your seasonings. Only purchase what you need. Who here is guilty of going to the grocery store on an empty stomach and tending to buy twice as much as what you normally would? Everybody's kind of guilty of that. So try to, bring a snack with you so you're not so ravenously hungry to the point where you're almost buying everything in the store, because that's when, your budget can tip over. All right. So is anybody familiar with the retail price versus the unit price? Has anybody ever heard of that? So it's actually really important when it comes to shopping at the grocery store. Looking at the unit price is actually key in terms of saving money. For example, you could buy a 6-ounce yogurt for 99 cents, or you could buy a 32-ounce container of yogurt for $2.99. So what can you do with the 32 ounces of yogurt? Oh, well, I don't want to buy as much. But if you're interested in having it for the week in terms of meal planning and batch, preparation, you can actually portion out your little yogurts. You can even add frozen berries to each container. The frozen berries will actually defrost and mix in with the yogurt, so you have like these ready-to-go parfaits for the week. That way you end up not wasting a whole container, okay? So shop smarter, not harder. All right, so when it comes to choosing whole grains, we have quite a variety of options we can choose from. We have our brown rice, farro, couscous, barley. I challenge you all to try one new grain this week, because I'm sure there might be one on here that you haven't tried yet. And sometimes people feel like they're not as comfortable with cooking whole grains, or it might taste a bit different. One recommendation that I have is actually to try cooking it in a low-sodium chicken or vegetable broth. It'll give the whole grain a really, really nice flavor. And chances are it's pretty similar to cook whole grains, just like rice and pasta, so just read the instructions. It's not too different. Another thing I always recommend buying in bulk that's a healthy whole grain would be popcorn. You can actually buy a bundle of kernels and pop your own popcorn at home. You're saving a lot of calories and fat and extra sodium when you're just popping your own popcorn. Then you can add your own favorite seasonings to it. One of my favorite things to do is pop my own popcorn with a little bit of olive oil. I'll add a little bit of garlic powder, Parmesan cheese, a little black pepper. If you want to do something a little sweeter, almost like a sweeter kettle corn, as a healthy snack, you can pop a bunch of popcorn and do cinnamon and even a little bit of Splenda or whatever sugar substitute you like. Okay? And then think of oatmeal. We see at the grocery store a lot of the prepared packets of oatmeal. Those actually have a lot of extra sugar and a lot of extra salt in them, and it's much more affordable to buy the larger canister of oatmeal and kind of add your own ingredients to it. Okay? Yes, the plain packet of oatmeal is fine. That's a great question. As far as a budget purpose, it's just more affordable to buy the larger canister and then portion it out yourself. But the plain one is fine nutritionally. Here we have our nuts. So nuts are a very healthy fat. I always tell people when it comes to getting our fat from foods, nuts, seeds, and avocados are great because they're very heart healthy. They can contain omega-3 fatty acids, and they have fiber in them as well, which helps keep us fuller for longer. Check out your local grocery store to see if they have a bulk section, because a lot of grocery stores actually sell nuts in bulk. And every item has something called a PLU code, so you actually could fill up a bag or bring your own bag, fill it up with nuts, and just have them weigh it out and price it out, and you save a lot of money that way, as opposed to buying like single-serve nuts and stuff like that. All right, then we have our beans, legumes, and peas. A lot of people aren't comfortable cooking with dried beans, but you actually save so much more money when you're buying the dried beans. The only tip with them is that you do have to soak them for a few hours or overnight before you get them cooking. People tend to buy canned beans for convenience, but it ends up costing you a lot more money. Plus they add a lot of salt and extra ingredients in them. So I always recommend, having people try to cook their own beans from scratch. So that's another thing I challenge you guys to do. Try a new whole grain and try cooking with dried beans. All right. When it comes to batch cooking and purchasing in bulk, buying block cheese is actually more affordable and either shredding it yourself or cutting it yourself. It is a little more labor intensive, but you are saving that extra dollar. The same thing with the yogurt that I mentioned, buying a single serve yogurt versus a 32-ounce container. It's definitely better to buy the bigger one. Lactose-free milk surprisingly has a longer shelf life because it's actually ultra pasteurized. So some people that tend to waste milk, it's good to do the lactose-free and it tastes the same. And then eggs you can also buy in bulk, especially if you have a big family, because chances are you're baking with eggs, you're cooking eggs. All right, so practical tips for cooking. When it comes to vegetables, one of my favorite things to do after I do a nice grocery store trip, I like to wash my vegetables right away, cut them up. I'll throw them on a huge sheet pan, a little bit of olive oil, a little bit of salt, pepper, garlic powder, whatever seasonings you like, and when in doubt, 350 degrees for about 20 minutes and you have some nice crisp vegetables. Then you can also steam or saute them. And you could do fresh or frozen. When you buy frozen vegetables, they're actually picked at their peak ripeness, so they actually taste really good. When it comes to meat, I always recommend throwing them on the grill. You can also pressure cook them or cook them in a crock pot, especially if you're trying to do a lot for batch cooking. One of my favorite things to do is actually take chicken, put it in my crock pot, and I'll just season it plain with a little salt, pepper, garlic powder. And then I'll use it for the week. So I might make like a stir fry one night with the chicken, vegetables, brown rice. I might use the other chicken for like a quesadilla later in the week. And then one day I might do like a chicken salad with a little bit of low-fat mayonnaise, diced celery, diced onion. So there's so much you could do. Then we have fish. I find that a lot of people are nervous when it comes to cooking fish, but I personally find that cooking fish is quite easier than meat even. You can cook meat, you can cook fish at a lower temperature. You could poach it, grill it, or bake it. So pretty simple to make. So when it comes to soups and stews, I always recommend people buy a stock pot. They're actually about this tall. So you can make your stock in advance using just like chicken bones, vegetable scraps that you have. You can make a chili or a stew. And then I recommend people get an immersion blender, especially as the winter months are coming. I found one for $15 at Walmart. You actually put, like say you're like roasting a bunch of tomatoes and you want to make a tomato soup. You can actually take the immersion blender, put it right in the pot, and it blends into a nice soup consistency, as opposed to putting it in the blender. Great kitchen tool. All right, and then we always want to keep food safety in mind. Whenever you're cooking a large amount of food at once, you always want to make sure it cools before putting it into containers and adding your lids on top, just because there's a temperature range called the danger zone where there can be a rapid amount of bacteria growth. So you always want to let things cool before you put the lid on and put them in the fridge. And then you can actually store soups and stews in muffin tins or small pre-portioned containers. And this talks a little bit about how to chill your leftovers. You want to let it cool for 2 hours and then put it in the fridge, and you want it to be at 40 degrees or below. And then as far as, as the summer's winding down, we're still having picnics and barbecues as a last hurrah. You always want to make sure that the food is kept out of the sun and that it's chilled appropriately. And then never put food in the fridge when it's too hot. All right, these are some of my favorite budget-friendly meals in terms of batch cooking. Sheet pan fajitas. You can literally take whatever protein you'd like. You can do shrimp, cod, chicken, shredded steak. You can just put it on a pan with onions, peppers, mushrooms, your favorite vegetables, and just roast it in the oven. Have your corn or flour tortillas ready, and then you have sheet pan fajitas. Another one I have here is farro. You can cook it in vegetable stock. Like I mentioned, cooking your greens in vegetable stock can give it a really nice flavor. You can add your favorite summer vegetables. I'm looking at some right here. We have some beautiful zucchini. We have some beautiful corn, tomatoes. Kind of mix it all together and just pair it with your favorite protein. All right, and some last budget-friendly tips. Coupons, coupons, coupons. I'm sure when you go to the store, they have the flyer right away. Clip those coupons to get a good deal. Getting a membership at a membership card at a store is also important. Great way to save money. And then we have shopping at more than one store. You don't have to do all your grocery shopping at one store. You know, the deals at one store for certain products that you like might be better than another one. So it's totally fine to kind of make that time to look around to save some extra money. And only purchase what you need. That kind of goes back to what I said before. Don't go to the grocery store on an empty stomach. All right. Thank you, guys. Does anyone have any questions?
You're talking about storing food in the fridge.
Mm-hmm.
How long can your stuff stay in the fridge before it becomes, you can't use it?
Okay.
Like refrigerating as opposed to freezing, how long will it last?
I like the 3-day rule.
Okay.
I kind of go by the
That's what I
3-day
follow,
rule.
you know,
Right.
Sometimes they get out, I'm like,
And knowing that you cooled it down appropriately. So it wasn't put in the fridge hot, you let it cool for quite some time to the point where it's room temperature, covered it up, then put it away. Mm-hmm.
I'm good.
Great. Anything else? Okay, thank you, guys. Now I'm going to introduce Katie to you from Massaro Farms. Welcome.
All right, hopefully you can all hear me. I'll try to speak slowly and clearly for purposes of our Facebook audience today. Hi, everyone. Again, my name is Katie. I am actually the executive director of what is a nonprofit community farm, actually an organic vegetable farm. We're a little bit unique, although not as much so as when we first formed in 2009, in that we are a mixed vegetable operation growing on a piece of property that used to be family owned, and like many family farms, had its demise over the decades in the middle of the 20th century. And the property eventually, when the last Massaro family member passed away, I'll give you a nice overview here. When the last Massaro family member passed away in 2007, the property was left to the town of Woodbridge. And originally the property spanned Woodbridge and Ansonia. And what was left was the 57 acres right on the line there of Woodbridge and Ansonia. And the town did not have any funds to invest in the property, but there were a group of residents who took an interest because there were some buildings still left on the property and really wanted to resuscitate this as a working farm. It had previously been a dairy farm and a chicken operation, and an idea was born to create a mixed vegetable operation using the CSA model. And the CSA model means that we are community supported agriculture. You may hear by a subscription or share. And so we began this project in 2010 by hiring a farmer and a small grant, well, what might seem like a large grant from the USDA, to basically put in the infrastructure and turn this property, which was previously fields for pasture, into what could be tillable fields for an organic vegetable option. It didn't look anything like what you see now. You see lots of structures, which we call those high tunnels or hoop houses, and those really provide a long season, which is really invaluable for small farms, and especially in New England, where we're trying to make the most of the growing season as we possibly can. As a nonprofit, we also do a lot of community outreach and education, which is one of the reasons I'm here with you today. And we have groups of students and adults come to the farm for things like workshops and field trips. We've even broadened out now into things like after-school programs and summer camp. So we're really excited because the whole idea, in addition to being this vegetable farm, is to allow people to experience and utilize the property as much as possible. So we grow approximately 40 plus varieties of vegetables, herbs, and flowers each year. We actually have honeybees on our property, so we are harvesting our own honey. And I'm really curious what Chef's gonna prepare for you today, because I gave him what was in season, and we heard Angela talk about using foods that are in season. Do we get a little sneak peek? Can you tell us what we're gonna be using today, what you're gonna be making?
We're actually going to individualize each item today and
Wow.
do something different with each one of them.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So just getting back to the farm. We do use about 12 to 14 of the existing acres of 57 acres for farming, and the rest is open space and woodlands. We also donate a good portion of what we are growing each year, and so that is probably anywhere between 10 and 15% of our annual harvest, or 6,000 to 10,000 pounds of produce. and we're donating that to local hunger relief pantries. And we really feel that's important, not only because the farm was originally part of the community, but also because we want to make sure that the food is getting to our neighbors, people right there who can also come and share in our space and be part of this community project. So in addition to the food donation, the reason why I'm here today and partnering with Griffin is because we have long been a partner with other organizations throughout the Valley, including the school districts. We hosted an AmeriCorps service member who went and created school gardens in Ansonia, in Derby, and also at the Valley YMCA. But we've been a partner with Griffin in their Vitals program, which was a 5-year project to increase health and nutrition and learning in schools. So our partnership goes way back. I talked a little bit about our community and the different things that we do. This is really just to give you an overview. There are lots and lots of things that happen at Massaro Community Farm. And where we started as a very small project with just 125 CSA subscribers. We now serve 300 annual subscribers. So we don't operate a typical farm stand like you might think, but there are some flexible options for you to come and purchase a share, which means you're getting your produce directly from your farmer right in the community. Now, Angela touched upon this a little bit by talking about why it's important to eat seasonally. So farmers are not doing this because they're getting rich, obviously, especially farms in Connecticut. And Connecticut is one of the few states in the last 10 years that has actually seen an increase in small farms, and that's like 10 acres or less. So we actually have a growth rate compared to the other states around us. So the people that are doing this and managing farms like this are doing it because they have a passion. They're not only growing your food, but they're also practicing techniques that allow the land to be better off than when they found it. So they're practicing these what we call regenerative or restorative practices that improve the quality of the land, which means the yield is better, which means when you're getting your produce, you're getting top quality, even if it's not the same quantity as we might see when we go to the grocery store. It's healthy for you, it's picked in season, and your body is getting the most from those fruits and vegetables. Now, I said we are primarily a vegetable farm, and even though we are a CSA, there are lots of ways in which you can take advantage of. We have a wonderful season here in Connecticut, quite long actually, especially with things like high tunnels and hoop houses. We get lots of varieties of fruits, we have dairy, we have meat, we have shellfish. In addition to vegetables, herbs, there's just such an abundance of what is grown across the New England area, but particularly here in Connecticut. Now, if buying a share, which we often hear this from folks, they say, buying a share of all this produce and taking this home every week is too much for me, or it's too much for me and my partner. So how else can we be a part of this, or how can we support local farms? So I just want to mention a couple of things and ways in which you can do this. So yes, there are smaller stores. So we, just like my husband and I, we certainly shop at our local large supermarkets, but there are smaller markets like Market 32, places like Trader Joe's and others that are making it a priority to source items from within the community. So that might be within 100 miles or within 200 miles. So looking for those markets that are in your community that are really trying to support those local producers, right? Anything, whether it's fruit, vegetables, meat, etc. So you can look for a local market. You can certainly look for a farm operating a farm stand. A couple other resources I wanted to mention. So there is a website called pickyourown.org. So if you have your kids or grandkids with you and you want to take advantage of local farms, you can check out pickyourown.org, and that allows you to look up places where you can go yourself and pick things when they're really at the peak of freshness, right? Take it home. That's kind of how I got interested in growing myself. So I didn't mention this, but even though I'm the executive director, I am not the farm manager. I couldn't do it, and we couldn't do it without our farm manager extraordinaire, Steve Munno. And Steve is actually trained in farming, even though we don't come from farming backgrounds, but he manages the entire growing operation. So Pick Your Own allows you to pick things at the peak of freshness and go on your own. Or if you want to look up local farms and you don't know where they are, even if you would just want to take a day drive, go a half hour out of your neighborhood. We have this wonderful organization in New England called NOFA, and it stands for Northeast Organic Farming Association. And they have chapters in Connecticut, in New York, and I think there is another one for New England that is like Maine, Vermont, and New Hampshire. And those websites are great because the farmers like us are participating with those. They're a connection for us to other local farmers, and oftentimes we do partner with other farms, but they're also a resource for the general consumer. So you can go into nofa.org, and look up farms that are in your community. So it doesn't mean stopping by a farm stand or trying to find local produce at your supermarket. There are lots of ways in which you can support your local growers who are really doing things like preserving open space, working really hard to grow varieties of tomatoes that you're not going to see in your supermarket, right? This is not a homogenized plain red beefsteak tomato. There's lots of different varieties, and small growers can experiment with things like that. They can experiment with small crops and heirloom varieties and things that we really want to protect because they may have been around for generations. I just want to point out a couple things that I brought from the farm this week and gave to Chef here to be used in our meal today. So we're not too far from your backyard community or your backyard gardens, where we are at the peak of the heat season right now, which means we are harvesting items like zucchini, and these are really large ones, yellow squash, and we also grow something else which a lot of people see for the first time on our farm. I did not see these before I was at Massaro Farm. This is a patty pan squash. It's the same as the yellow squash, basically. Eggplant, many, I don't even know how many varieties of tomatoes we grow, but I actually brought one with me. We do have lots and lots of tomatoes, and in addition to selling them to our CSA subscribers, we also work with a local processor so that we don't lose out on that harvest. That's also a challenge, is getting our produce to a processor on their schedule, but it allows us to save the harvest, and we turn it into things like salsa and tomato sauce. Lots of varieties of peppers, lots of different shapes and sizes. I think that's what I brought for you today, because that's what we had the most of. Just by way of information, we don't grow corn or soy at our farm. We just don't have the space to do it, but we do partner with Clover Nook Farm in Bethany, and that's where that corn is from today. So with that, I'm going to wrap up. I really appreciate being here with you today and getting a chance to talk about farms and to talk about how and where you can support your local farm. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Chef. Really excited to see what he's going to make here today.
Let's have a round of applause for Katie Poole. Thank you. So before I turn it over to Chef Daryl here, I did want to just revisit the great presentation that Angela did, and of course Katie Poole. Griffin really works hard with the community. We have a huge community garden on site that Massaro Farms helps us maintain, and we work with team. We do a lot for the community, and the idea is population health, getting everyone healthy, keeping our community well. And that's why we do these events. There's a lot of education, there's a lot of behavior change that needs to happen, and we want to show that eating healthy can be done, and it can be done in a cost-effective way. So, keep that in mind as we go through this and we watch Chef do his magic back here. So, again, this is Chef Daryl Murphy here, everybody.
Hi, everybody. How are you? All right, so today I decided to approach batch cooking in a way that I feel like is most valuable to everybody here, right? Everybody here works a day-to-day job. Most of you probably have older children now, but my children are younger, and today was the first day of school. So now we go back to juggling work and still preparing meals for our kids when we go home, right? So what I want to show you and talk to you about a little bit is how to save time, right? Which is the most valuable thing that we all have, is time. So today we have some beautiful zucchini, some beautiful eggplant, tomatoes, corn, and I'm just going to show you how to kind of par cook it all and freeze it so that whenever you go back to cook it, it literally takes 2 minutes in the pot and you're done. 2 minutes in the pot, 2 minutes in the oven, 2 minutes of a saute, and now you have like a full meal, right? So Angela said earlier, there's different ways for us to kind of save money. One of those ways is to buy things in bulk, right? I know that the hospital is very close to BJ's. I know that I stop there often and I buy things in bulk. Now, how do we save time by buying in bulk? We cook it all, pretty much, right? So we cook it all, but we portion it out in ways that fits our family. So families are, we know, huge, small, different sizes, right? So me, I cook for 5 people every day. Myself, my kids, and my wife. I often, early on when I first started cooking for the family, ran into a problem of always having too many leftovers, right? Because who knows if the boys are gonna wanna have extra servings this week or not. We really don't know. So an easy way to kind of fix that, actually I'll leave it off because I sound a lot better, I'm not struggling. An easy way to fix that is to have things ready to go and you just pull what you need. Let's say they say, Daddy, I'm still hungry. I could easily just go to the fridge, pull it out. It's gonna take me 2 minutes to whip up another batch or whatever it is that we're having. So let's start with the corn today. So we have a fresh ear corn. And one of the things that I think is popular right now is cobbed corn for whatever cookouts or picnics you guys may have. So let's just start by cutting this in half. And we drop it right in our water. It's really just that simple. So you will take your ears of corn, you will shuck them all. I did a few for you. And at the end of this, if you guys would like to take some of this stuff home, you definitely can, okay? But I'll show you how you do it. I mean, you guys probably already know. Everybody knows how to shuck corn? Okay, I was going to get worried if you didn't. All right? It's one of those popular things. So we just shuck it. This is one of those things that you can have the husband do. He thinks that he's just going to slide away and watch the game. No, sir, buddy. You come right here. You can shuck this corn for me. You guys are going to be doing most of the cooking. I know that my situation at home is a little bit different because I'm a chef and I give my wife that luxury of not having to cook every day. But for you ladies, I don't know if that's the same story. So, you shuck your corn, you drop it in the water, and it literally takes a couple of minutes, and then we want to pull it out. So we're only going to do it for a couple of minutes because we're going to re-cook it at some point in time. What you want to do is kind of get it cooked through enough so when you freeze it, it doesn't ruin the quality of your produce. If you were to try to freeze something from raw and pull it out, it will get mushy on you. Once things get frozen, that water content inside of whatever vegetable that you freeze, it kind of, once it freezes up and then it thaws, it ruins the quality of it. So you have to kind of partially cook it before you freeze it. So when you go to the grocery store and you buy your frozen vegetables in the frozen section and you pull it out, all of that stuff is par cooked. I don't like it because it's easily overcooked. If you're cooking with broccoli, is one of those perfect things. I hate frozen broccoli because it's one of those things that you put in the pot to kind of cook and thaw. Dad, I turn for 3 seconds and I come back and it's mushad, right? It's all crappy. What are you gonna do with it now? It's soup. You're gonna have to make soup now. But let's see where we're at. When you do it yourself, you have full control over how much is cooked and how much is not. So if you do your broccoli, you put it in literally for a minute and you take it out and you freeze it. When you go back, I personally like to roast my broccoli because I have small children and they refuse to eat vegetables at times. What roasting your vegetables do is it brings the sugar content out of all of the vegetables. And then the kids gives it a more appealing flavor and taste to them. And magically, like my son's favorite vegetable now was broccoli. He's 4 years old. I couldn't get him to eat anything else, but he loves broccoli. The day that he asked for seconds, I almost fainted. But, that's the type of things that, we have to play with food to kind of get them to eat things that they wouldn't normally eat, right? So this you would just do in bulk, and you would put it in your Ziploc bags, label and date it, so you know how long it was in it. We don't want it to get freezer burned. So you label and date it. And to answer the question you had earlier, I would say, agree with Angela, 3 days. Shouldn't be in there for more than 3 days. But that's why batch cooking is so good. You can open the fridge and you say, what do I have in here? What's been in here a while, right? I have this, that, and a third. Okay, I'm gonna batch cook soup, right? You take any vegetables that you have that have been in the fridge for a while, you think it's kind of on its way out, you chop them up, you put them in this pot, or any pot that you have, and you make your favorite soup, and then you freeze it. Now, what would you freeze soup in? I like those deli containers that we use at the hospital. You can buy those, and not everywhere, but I have a Restaurant Depot card, and that's where I get those containers from. And I put my sauces in there. And speaking of sauce, let's move on to the tomato. And then you know what? I'll bounce back to the tomato in a second. Another thing that we can do with the corn is we can cut the kernels out of it, and we can roast it, right? So you just go down the side. And it gives you the kernels. So one thing you could do with the kernels, Angela mentioned farro before. There's things you can do to kind of spice it up. One of the things that I find for myself that is very difficult to do is keeping things fresh. You probably made everything a million times, right? So now you have to really work on the details and kind of fine tune the details of what you're doing. You probably made rice a million times, but have you ever added corn to your rice? Have you ever added peppers to your rice? So things like this, you can add to that. Now, what would we do? You would take these kernels, put them in any bowl that you have at the house. Simply season it with a little salt and pepper if you would like. You don't have to. But what you do need to do is cook it some form or fashion, right? So you take a little olive oil. I'm going to put a splash on that little bit of we have here. A little salt, pepper. And all we would do is mix this up. Obviously, we would have a lot more kernels of corn in here. You would do a few airs. Put it on a pan, and you would just roast it. So, roasting vegetables. What temperature do you guys roast vegetables on? I see a lot of people in here that I know you guys are cooking at home. And one of the questions that I get often when we do these demonstrations is what temperature do you cook your vegetables on when you're roasting them in the oven? What do you guys do? 350? 350? How long is that taking you, 350? Half hour, right? So I personally like to cook them on 425, right? 425 for 25 minutes. What that does is it gives me that caramelization I was talking about earlier in my vegetables, and it gives it a nice crisp on the outside, but it's very tender on the inside. So that's what I would do with all my vegetables. Now, because we're going to be freezing those, you don't want to cook it the full 25 minutes, right? I would say 10 to 15 minutes in the oven. Now, when we go back, and you go back to cook it again, now you literally have roasted corn in 10 minutes, right? You can't get that anywhere else. Beautiful ears of corn like this. You want to make sure that you're keeping the integrity of it and the quality of it is the same for everything that you're preparing, right? So we're going to let that go for about 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then we'll have roasted corn, all right? Somebody put their timer on my watch because I like to talk and I get carried away, and we'll have crispy corn, if you know what I mean. Okay? So we have these beautiful tomatoes. I know that Betty knows how to make fresh tomato sauce. I didn't mean to stick you out like that, but I'm sorry. All right, so what we'll do is we got our nice tomato here. We're going to start by coring it. And then what we would do after is score the bottom. What I mean by score is just take your knife and slightly make an X on the bottom of it. Then you will have a not boiling, but like a simmering pot of water here going. And you just drop that in. All right? You literally let that go in there for about a minute or two. And once that comes out, I'll show you how to peel it. And then you pretty much have the canned all-purpose tomatoes that we all buy. You have it fresh, and you can store it in your mason jars, preservative jars, and keep it in your fridge for a few days and make your sauce. Me personally, I like to use tomatoes like this in my rice dishes. I like to make homemade sauce from time to time if I have the time. Also, you can make salsa out of this type of tomato as well. Delicious. Okay? So like I said, we'll let that go for a little while. And you'll see that it will begin to peel right away, okay? What you don't want to do is leave it in too long, and then it'll start getting mushy and you lose that firmness. So I think that this is about ready. That took what, 30 seconds, not even? Can you see how that peeled already? Okay. Then you just take the back of your knife, the knife, and you just go over the tomato and you just peel that, just like so. And if you don't need it, you don't need it. Sometimes it just peels off really easily. Look at that. Beautiful. You guys are extremely quiet. You guys tired? Or am I that entertaining? I'm gonna go with B. Just because. All right, so you buy yourself a dozen tomatoes. Depends on how much sauce you want to make, right, Betty? Right. Got a big family. It's going to take a lot of tomatoes. This is why a lot of people are probably buying canned tomatoes, because this could take some time. But I hear stories of how the family gets together, these huge pots go onto the stove, and the tomatoes all go in, and then the whole family kind of makes sauce together. That never happened at my house, but the only time I could think that happens are around the holidays, you know? Christmas, Thanksgiving, Easter, the bigger holidays. I call those the food holidays, right? Because that's what everybody's looking forward to. So you peel that off as good as you can, get it all off, and then all you do is, depending on what it's for, you either dice it, you leave it whole, you can have it, however you guys, you need to apply it in the recipe that you're making, okay? So what we have here is tomato, corn, two ways. We have one in the oven, and we have the cob corn that we already steamed off. All these things can just be held either in the freezer or in the oven. The tomato, I would say not to put it in the freezer, right? Because we only partially boiled it for the skin to come off. If this were to go in the freezer, that thing would happen where the water content in it would just expand it, and then it would shrink back down once it thawed, and it wouldn't be usable. It would get really mushy, really soft, and really crummy. You wouldn't want to use that anymore. Okay? Next, we will move on to these beautiful, beautiful zucchini that we have here. Huge. I want one of the bigger ones, just because. These things are huge. So, when Katie was talking about some of the things that they do in Massaro Farms to kind of keep the integrity of all the vegetables, it clicked with me right away why these things are so huge, right? They're in season. The gentleman that's growing these, Steve, what's his name, right, Katie? Yes. He's doing a great job, as you guys can see, right? Do you see these in the grocery store? Almost never, right? The summer squash as well. You never see them this big in the grocery store. I've never in my life seen a patty pan squash the size of my son's head. That's never in my life. But, these are the type of things that you get from the local farms that you won't find in the grocery store. So, okay, zucchini. Zucchini is one of those things that you can pretty much do 15 million things with it, right? We can make zucchini bread. We can grill it. We can saute it. We can roast it. All of those things can be done by simply fabricating it the way that you want to fabricate it. If you want them in rings, cut them in rings. And rings are typically for a grill squash. You don't want it to kind of fall through the grates and you lose it. We can dice it. This one is huge. As you see, we're going to get a lot of dice out of this. I don't even know how to attack it. Now, whenever we're cutting these and we're dicing these, we want to kind of do them all uniform. And why is that? Love you guys. So they cook even. Absolutely. All right, if I have one like this and I have one like that, it's not going to work out. Okay? So you kind of want to make sure that everything is the same size and we're cooking everything in uniformity. Now, what I would do with this is the same thing that we did with the corn. Meaning, we cook it for briefly, very briefly. Now, normally, if I was cooking zucchini, let's say at the hospital, it would only be roasting for probably 5 minutes the most at 425. No more than that. Zucchini is one of those things that if you overcook it, it gets really soft, it gets really mushy. Believe it or not, it's one of the things that cooks overcook the most. Zucchini and broccoli. It's because it doesn't really need much for you to get it cooked the way that you want and for it to be tender like you like it. So what I would do with the zucchini is I would roast it or saute it. Yes, you can steam it. Obviously, grilling it will work as well. It's just like, to me, grilling it is very similar to roasting it. But this is something that I would steer away from boiling or steaming, only because it takes way too short of a time to cook, and you will probably lose it doing those other applications. So just like the corn, exact same thing. So if this is going in, let's say, a pasta dish, lightly salt everything. I always salt everything just because I just like everything to have its natural flavor and kind of show in any dish that I'm cooking. So lightly salt, and I can just tell by smelling the corn that it's done. So I'm going to pull that out. Can you guys see that? Can you see it on the screen, or can you see it? Yeah. Right? It's nice and caramelized. This is ready to go. Now this can be cooled because we don't want to put anything fresh into the fridge, fresh out of the oven. That could be cooled, and that could be put in your salsa. That could be put in a rice, a farro. That could be put in soup, right? That could be put in a milk. Can you guys smell it? It smells delicious, right? So it's very simple. You saw it took no time at all to do. In the oven, ready to use. The same thing with the zucchini. Lightly salt, lightly olive oil, and I like to use olive oil because it's one of the healthiest oils. That and avocado oil. Toss that around. Goes on a sheet pan, goes in the oven. So these things are all going to save you a load of time, right? Because we're coming home from work. What's for dinner? First thing, as soon as you walk through, not how was your day? Not I hope you had a wonderful day, Mom. No. What's for dinner, right? So now we go to the kitchen. This is what's for dinner. Boom, boom, boom. You already have it pretty much made. Like Angela had mentioned earlier, fish is probably the only thing I wouldn't cook ahead of time. It cooks so quickly that you don't want to really cook any fish ahead of time. Chicken breast, steaks, any of those whole protein meats, pork, you can cook ahead of time and reheat, but be careful when reheating. I personally seldomly use the microwave to reheat anything because it just makes it so tough, right? And then when we're reheating chicken, pork, or not reheating it, these things can be put on your salads for lunch. These things can be put on sandwiches to eat. Or they could just have, a couple of slices of the roast beef you made with maybe some crackers or something like that. Whatever you want, It's very easy to do. It saves you a load of time, and you don't have to spend that quality time that you could be spending with your family in the kitchen. Okay, so let's move on to the patty pan squash. Can you tell I'm having fun or no? Now, patty pan squash is one of those things that you'll never find it like this in the grocery store. I'm gonna step out on a limb and say that you will never find it this big in a grocery store. A local farm, most likely, but in a store, no. So, typically, what you would do with patty pan squash is you could either leave it whole or you can have it. Remember, this is normally the size of probably a golf ball, right? So that's why this is so impressive to me. Okay, because I don't even know. This has to be diced. Be diced similar to the way that we did the Or you could do steaks out of it. That was my next thing. Or you could do steaks out of it, very similar to cauliflower steaks. You guys ever have cauliflower steaks? We did it at the hospital a couple of times. I think I gotta bring it back to remind you guys of the cauliflower steak. Okay, but patty pan. So what does it taste like? It tastes very similar to the summer squash, very similar to zucchini. Speaking of which, this is done already. So that was what, 2 minutes? 2.5. Can you hear that? 425 is the magic number, ladies and gentlemen. All ready to go. You will let that cool. You will put it in your Ziploc bag. You will put it in your nice containers that you ladies probably have stacked nicely in your cabinets. That, you know, I'm just going to use this moment to say this. I'm probably the only guy that has to go through my containers being put in every different cabinet, right? I don't know how you ladies put up with these things, but you guys you deserve the world. Because the top is in this cabinet, the bottom is in the cabinet. And I'm like, what are we doing? Do you want me to cook or not, right? That's where you have to kind of draw the line. Okay, so patty pan squash. Let's do the steaks. Who's ever had a patty pan squash steak? It does. Very nice. Very firm texture. I'm just as surprised as you ladies. I'm not going to lie to you. And gentlemen, I'm sorry. I don't want to exclude you gentlemen in the back there.
Chef, what do you plan on doing with that patty pan
I am going to
squash?
saute these up partially and show them how this can also be stored and used at a later time for a different application. You have a family get-together and, you know, every once in a while you'll get, hey, I'm bringing such and such and they don't eat meat. You guys all had this happen to you, right? What are we going to do for them? I know what we're going to do. Patty pan squash steaks, right? We'll have these and we'll do exactly the same thing. And the reason why I keep it simple and basic with just salt, maybe some pepper and some garlic, is because now I can add different flavorings to it and it won't get lost in whatever it was flavored with beforehand. If that makes sense to you. Now this could be any cuisine. It could be Caribbean, it could be Italian, it could be Asian, right? Just salt, pepper. It's in every last one of those types of cuisines. So now you don't have to worry about, oh, I can't do this with it because I did that to it. Keep it simple. All right, so what I'm going to do here is make it nice and nice for you. A little parsley.
Whoever said a man can't sweat in the kitchen?
This is a normal day. Now, depending on the presentation that you're going for, you either cut your parsley up fine or you leave it, you know, a little rustic is the new term that people use whenever they don't want to cut parsley fine, right? So I personally like it in between the two. Not too fine, not too rustic, right in the middle. So what we do here is put that parsley in there. Our olive oil. All of this will probably take about a tablespoon of olive oil. I think that people tend to over olive oil the foods and they get these really greasy pieces of vegetable. You don't want to do that. So about a tablespoon should do it, and we'll put a tablespoon in the pan. Our salt. Our pepper. Let's get this going. And I would say about a half tablespoon of fresh garlic. So now all we would do is just work that around and make sure that we get all that flavor on both sides of our patty pan squash steaks. So now, once these are kind of seared and put in the pan, whatever sauce that you would like to go over the top can go over the top now, because we didn't over season it with a lot of particular spices or herbs. This is just parsley, salt, pepper, and garlic, right? Now once this gets hot enough,
Jeff, some of the neighbors are calling, asking what we're cooking here today. We have neighbors calling, asking what we're cooking up in here.
You have neighbors calling and asking
what we're cooking.
Oh. This is the first for me. I'm not even gonna lie. I came up with it off the top of my head, but Katie had also mentioned it, but I think this is gonna come out delicious. Now, whenever we saute, it's very important that initially your pan is hot enough, but not so hot that it's going to burn your garlic, and then your garlic kind of gets bitter. All right, so I just turned it down a little bit. And one of the things that I also don't do whenever I'm sauteing is I don't meddle with it too much. Right? I know that it makes people feel like they're really cooking when they do all of this stuff, right? And they move it around and they take it off, but you gotta let the stove do its job. Okay? You let the stove do its job, and I promise that it takes half of the time to cook. Anytime that you lift it off, that means it's not getting heat and it's not being cooked, right?
But Chef, you're on TV.
Say again?
You're on TV.
Which is fine. That's why they need to get all this information as well. Because somebody's probably home right now mimicking me, but instead of just letting it cook, they're doing this. And they're flipping it, and just let it cook. Now, the beautiful thing about patty pan squash is, if you fabricate it, you season it, wrap it up and put it in. This is not one of those things that you necessarily have to freeze or anything like that. It's gonna cook so fast. This is just about done already. And it literally took us only a couple of minutes. Now this could be paired up with your favorite grains, more vegetables, or something like shrimp can go right over the top really nicely. You drizzle a nice little sauce over it. Now you're really cooking, right? You're gonna impress somebody. What is that? I've never seen that before. First of all, you're already winning me because they've never seen a patty pan squash that big before in their life. So you're already gonna win. I'm gonna add a little olive oil. You want to make sure that it keeps getting that brown, nice brown, golden brown. So I added probably another tablespoon and a half to get it going again. But my oven is on medium, right between medium and medium high right now. You let that cook. I just had the greatest idea ever. So I'm going to take the corn and the zucchini that we already made, and we're just going to plate up this this patty pan steak. This is meant for me it's meant to happen.
We love a little creativity.
Why not? Now, if I was home, there'd probably be a bottle of wine in the corner of the Oh, this is beautiful. You guys have any questions? It's been awful quiet. No? Nothing?
So
It's really
the question posed to Chef was about moisture in the vegetables and
Right.
how to keep them from getting mushy in the refrigerator.
So it's really about cooking time, cooking method, cooking preparation. If it's something that has a high content of water in it, and we're afraid that we may overcook it, I personally think that's something that needs to be either roasted or sauteed, right? You don't want to steam it because it's such high water content in it already, all right? So those types of things, we have to be very careful that we follow the cooking instructions on them. Or we can buy fresh produce. You don't have to worry about that, right? Because now you're starting from the beginning of the cooking process versus having it kind of already to go for you already, right? It's such a treat to be able to fabricate things the way you want them and the way that your family likes to have them, right? So this way, we don't have to worry about the broccoli being too small, and that's why it's cooking so fast. Or the ears of corn, I don't know, not being the size that you would like them to be, right? Now you have to buy an extra bag because they're so small. But if you buy the whole ear of corn, you can cut those and fabricate those the way that you want them to be. And you don't have to worry about those types of issues. You gentlemen in the back, do you guys cook at home? Yeah? Good, awesome. Gotta give you guys some cool points too. Just a little bit? It's better than nothing. It's okay.
So a lot of the men
That
in the
smells
audience try to make
delicioso.
it look good in cooking.
So we got our patty pan, steak here.
So the question was, when you're roasting frozen vegetables, do you still keep the oven at 425?
Yes, absolutely. And that's because we want to get that sugar content to kind of come out of whatever vegetable that you're roasting. I will say though that if you're roasting a frozen vegetable, that you kind of want to let it thaw a little bit before you put it in the oven, or else you're going to get that puddle of water on the bottom of your tray whenever you're roasting those vegetables off. So what we'll do now is we'll finish panning up and plating up that patty pan squash, and we're going to finish it with a little concassé tomato over the top and a balsamic drizzle. And we kind of just put together a really quick dish using things that we made today, and it really took, it really would take no time to do if you were at home and you had this stuff already prepared, ready to go. Still no questions? Okay. Yes. I only peel the eggplant if I'm making eggplant parm. If I'm gonna roast it or grill it, I keep the skin on. The skin can sometimes ruin the texture of your eggplant parm if you keep it on, and it kind of gets that stringiness whenever you bite into it, and it kind of stays on, and it gives you a weird bite, if that makes sense to you.
And Chef, we had a question about making zucchini chips.
Yes.
Have you ever done that before?
I never made zucchini chips. I have made kale chips. a lot of leafy vegetable chips, kale chips, collard green chips, Swiss chard chips. I haven't done kale before, but I have done the tempura kale sticks. So you get a nice tempura batter and you fry them up really nice, and then you can put like a nice aioli over the top of it. It would be great. Another thing to do, we spoke briefly on canned beans, dry beans. If you bought your beans in the can, you could just take it right out of the can, rinse them really well, toss them in olive oil or in your favorite spices, put them in the oven for 25, let those cook for about 20-25 minutes, and you get a nice crunchy snack to have with whatever bean is kind of your favorite. Garbanzo, what else can we, white beans, canelli bean, whatever beans you would like to use. Okay, and then we have the finishing touch here. Here we have it. You guys see that? Yep. And that was all out of just vegetables that we prepared here today. If you guys don't have any questions, that concludes today's demo. I hope you got some take-homes today. This was fun for me. Yes, ma'am.
When you had the water, is that just a simmer?
It was a simmer. Yeah, it was a simmer. If you have it at like that rolling boil, you're likely to kind of overcook those tomatoes that you put in there. Like I said, it literally took seconds for us to do. But if we would have put it in there, let's say you put a few in there, a bunch, 5 or 6, those tomatoes at the bottom, they would be crappy by the time you got to them to take them out to peel them, because that boil is just too much, too hot. No salt, just water. Just water. We save the seasoning and the salting for whatever recipe application. You don't want to kind of throw that recipe application off by having it salted already. Great questions. This is probably about a quart. I knew that I was only going to do like 1 tomato. That's why I have this small pot here, but it's only about a quart of water. It got to a boil really quickly. When you're at home, you're only going to do probably a half dozen tomatoes. This size pot is fine. You're going to put 3 or 4 in. You're going to take 3 or 4 out in less than 30 seconds and have the. It's literally going to take you 2 minutes to do about 8 tomatoes. All right, you pull them all out, and you can let them sit for a little bit so they cool, and you can handle them, and then you can start peeling them.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to bring Katie and Angela back up front to give the audience a last chance to ask any questions of our presenters here who did a fabulous job today. I hope everyone enjoyed our cooking on a budget, some single pot batch cooking. Are there any other questions for Angela or Katie from Massaro Farms? No? All right. We did have a few questions that we answered from our Facebook audience, which was awesome. I want to thank everyone for coming today, for tuning in, and for our live audience here. And be on the lookout for more programming coming out of our Center for Healthy Living in the future. Thank you, everybody.